Good morning and welcome back to Deer Valley Homestead.
Quitting your job and coming home to start a homestead is a dream for a lot of people. It might not be the best idea, but that's exactly what I have done, and here you can see everything that we've gotten up to in the last year.
Oh yes, Mr. Foxy was trying to eat some pheasant for dinner. Ducks, I gave you food and water right by your house. You don't want to stay there in the nice, easy place with no snow? I might try and lock them up in the duck area because I think they could probably manage to get themselves stuck on a day like today.
Towards the middle of January, we got the keys to our new house. This is our second property in the little village, and this one comes with a very small vineyard, a little summer house, a nice wine cellar, and a barn, which is always a bonus. Of course, it means we're doubly busy over any other year, but then again, when are we not crazy busy? You will see us back here towards the end of the year making wine, brandy, and starting to refurbish the house. By the beginning of February, I started on the new garden, and it's kind of a garden within a garden. But because we like to free range all of our flock as much as possible, that's the guineas, Indian runner ducks and the chickens, then it's quite important that we have a fence between all the tasty veggies and them. And to be honest, I'd completely forgotten that I did this year. That's how quickly this year's flown past. I'm pretty lucky to have a neighbour who's a bit of a tractor fanatic, who happens to own a plough and a big rotavator for the back of his tractor. He came and had a go in February. Unfortunately, the ground was still too wet in this place, but he did end up coming back later on. But it wasn't a problem, just gave me more time to get the fence finished. And of course, while we were doing the garden fence, we also did the new duck area fence. At some point soon, I'm actually going to upgrade the duck house as well, and probably the area around the pond, as it has now turned into a slightly muddy mess as we've introduced more and more ducks. It was great when we had 3 ducks, but now we have 9. They are slowly turning it into a muddy mess, and we'll come up with some solutions for that over the next few months. By March, the ground had dried up just enough, and my neighbour had a weekend free, so he came on a Sunday afternoon and ploughed and rotavated what became our new garden. It was very, very productive in the end, and I have to say, having these guys help me out like this was just a massive, massive help. I have rotavated this ground before from grass, and for a much smaller area than this, it took me 3 days. And to be honest, even after these guys had rotavated and ploughed it for me, I still went through it with the rotavator a couple more times, and it still was hard going. This ground used to be just open field. It had cows on it. It previously had horses on it. It was just solid. After the fence was finished, we made some gates. This one actually was made from an old window crate when we'd had one of our new windows delivered. And by now, if you know anything about me, is that I do not like to waste anything. If there's a way to reuse it, I will do it. And this is one of those cases. Could have just thrown the window pallet away, but instead it made us a couple of really nice gates for the duck area. One of the fun parts of doing these video projects is that I get to look back and see what it was like at the beginning of the year. Sometimes I don't have the best memory and I just forget how far we've moved along. This was our first hatching of chicks for the year. And actually the black one in the front has become one of our best egg layers. This was the earliest hatch that we did this year, which was in March. Here we get about 5 months a year where we can have frosts, so it does limit a little bit how much we do with the poultry and the other birds, just because when there's nothing outside for them to eat naturally and it is that little bit colder, you can't just put them outside. And while I do have heat lamps and heat plates and all that kind of stuff, of course the less you run them, the cheaper it is to run them. I spotted this old rabbit tree when we first looked around the new property, and it was in the back of my mind to fix it up, put it back together and use it for some of our rabbits. We always need more space. However, by the time I pressure washed it, had a good look through it, it ended up getting chopped up and used as firewood. It just wasn't a condition that I would like the rabbits to be in. In April, Beata took me shopping and bought some bees. Bees have always been something that Beata's been interested in and wanted to own. So we started out with 2 hives of what was supposed to be very relaxed and calm bees. Unfortunately, about the same time, Bee had to go back to work. She works as chief officer, she works at sea, and so she generally works away for 3 months and then has 3 months at home. That of course meant I was left to look after the bees, which I was more than happy to do.
Sure, I just squashed a bee.
And of course spring brings all its own joys for the animals. It's the wrong way, buddy.
So every day they get a little bit more active, and in about a week's time they will be going insane, running around everywhere, and we won't be able to stop them. Not that we want to stop them, but you know what I mean. It's the water bowl, guys. Alright, it's time.
By April we were onto the new chicken house, and I was absolutely determined to come up with some roll-away nest boxes. While I love selling the eggs, collecting the eggs and everything to do with them, one thing I really don't like is washing eggs. A, because it takes that natural coating off them, and B, because it's just not that interesting.
All my ladies are morning ladies. I know, right? There's all the rubbish from the fencing.
Well, the chickens were happy to follow me into their new area for just a little bit of grain. They weren't so quick to work out where they were going to sleep that night. But of course, that shouldn't be a total surprise. In the end, I only collected them twice, and by the 3rd day, they all started to go in on their own. Funnily enough, I have a new group of chickens as we speak, who are on their 5th day in this new house, and out of the 16 new chickens there are 7 who go to bed no problem every night and did from the 1st day, and the rest of them are still not willing to go in. After the mullards last year, I thought it was going to be almost impossible to find some poultry with as much personality. However, we got these 4 goslings, and wow, the amount of chaos they can cause and yet be super cool at the same time is quite incredible. We had a lot of fun with the garden this year. Some things worked out incredibly well, as you'll see later on in the video, and some were a complete failure, but that's just part of the learning process for me. One of the fun projects I did was trying to grow as much chicken food as we could, and that mostly involved corn and sunflowers.
Pause this for a small detour. You know I always get distracted. These guys are coming out for their day in the sun. I know guys, I know, I'm sure it's not comfortable. Okay, let's get you in here. Oh, I know. There you go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're smaller than the others. There you go. Okay, is that enough grass? Yeah? Bit of sunshine.
It wasn't long after this video was shot that I stopped giving these guys any form of pellets. They just wanted grass all of the time. and wow, can they eat a lot of grass. I feel like a group of 10, maybe 15, could keep my whole garden grass cut for the entire summer with the rate they eat it. So I won't go too close, but that's where she is. You pushed some eggs out, lady. What's going on? Given the interest earlier in the year from the fox and the kuna, otherwise known as a pine marten, in all of our animals, we've really been trying to upgrade throughout the year and really stop any of the predator attacks that have been coming. And having successfully managed to breed our pheasants, we invested in a new pheasant area, and you'll see them move into there shortly.
A little bit more. Well done. That's where the food is.
We managed to hatch 2 batches of eggs and I think 16 pheasants in total, although sadly only 6 made it to adulthood, and that was due to a combination of factors, but mostly predators. That was like the 25th time I've stopped and checked everything, but I think we're there. I'm pretty sure these guys are just going to fly straight up and out, so I'm going to run straight over to where you are and watch them with you. Alright guys, you're free! Mostly. Okay, that was one. Oh, it doesn't like the chicken. Look at all this space you got. If you've made it this far in the video, please consider commenting, liking and subscribing. You can head back through the catalogue of videos and pretty much anything you see in this next half hour. There is a longer video on if you want to find out some more information.
You can leave. Oh, there we go.
We ended up with these 2 males, one of which is a tenebros and one of which we think is a half-breed between the golden pheasant and the tenebros. We also had 4 ladies who come a little bit later.
Leave him alone, Mr. Chicken.
We had a lot of difficulty this year with predators, and this pheasant house hopefully is 100% predator proof. The 3 that we had the problem with were the fox, who you will see make an appearance later, the pine marten, who I didn't know existed before moving to Slovakia, but is just able to rip through almost anything, and the last one that caused us a couple of problems was an eagle, and possibly a hawk. We're not 100% sure which one it was. However, about every 3 months he does come past and he does manage to grab a chicken. And while we do have big nets up over the poultry area, we do have to take it down in winter because of the heavy snow load.
I don't even have anywhere to put you guys, so you're going to have to suffer through me cleaning, okay? The fresh grass, guys, enjoy it. What are you doing in there, buddy? It's not where you're supposed to be. So after I caught Mr. Fox, I saw him run out here, and basically what he was doing was coming in, catching a chicken, dragging it out into the field and hiding it in the long grass.
Sometimes I wish I was just a little bit meaner and I would be happy to shoot the fox. However, that's just not my way of doing things. I tend to feel that he's just there trying to get by, get some food for his family, as am I. So unless I do manage to catch him alive, I'm afraid he will be a feature for a while. And if I do, he'll be taken somewhere and released. Between an incubator and a broody hen, I will always choose the broody hen. I just find I have such higher incubation rates with the live hens over the electric version. Now what I would like to do in here eventually, concrete floor in there, concrete floor all the way down here and all the way out. There is a really good solid concrete wall down here, and then that half has an underneath to it. It's actually the old toilet where all the waste from the animals used to drain to. I don't know if this is one of our bees, but I like to think that it was. And I like to think that I've got that honey from that flower in my cup of tea.
You could take this much every day at the moment. They are just flying everywhere. And we even have some little pumpkins appearing. What, do you want to eat the zucchini too? Oh, I don't think so.
With the various predator problems we had over the summer, I've had a trap or two out every single night for the whole summer. Unfortunately, by far the most common animal that I caught is this cat. It is our cat, I say that, it adopted us. The animal I was really trying to catch is this pine marten who you see on camera now. This guy managed to get into such small spaces and really get to some animals that we really would have liked to have kept. Unfortunately, it was just far too clever for me. Everywhere I moved the trap, everywhere I tried to hide it, every time I washed it, I kept my scent away from it, you name it, I tried it. Different baits, everything. It was just too clever. Of course, while we were busy with the homestead, we were still working on the new property as well. And wow, was there some amount of rubbish there. We didn't keep a tally, but I think we must have spent 30 days just removing the rubbish. There is nothing quite as pleasurable as your first honey harvest. I say this knowing that I know very, very little about bees. Luckily, I have Beata, and she does know a fair amount about bees. And basically anytime anything needed doing, she would give me some detailed instructions and I would go and get on with it without necessarily understanding what I was doing. The results of that were this golden amber honey, and wow, this honey from your own bees just tastes so much better than anything you can buy from the shops.
Make an airy soil because it's very hard, so they don't have a place to expand because the soil is like a rock.
Yeah. We think the golden might be a boy. He started to get that big patch around his eyes. And the others, we're not sure yet. Hopefully we'll get some Tenebros ladies. But who knows. They seem to really, really like this enclosure. They are thriving, they are growing fast, they're putting on a good amount of weight. They've not managed to eat the grass bare or anything like that, so it's staying pretty nice for them. They have shade any time of the day, water, food. They seem to be loving life. So these are our second year walnut trees. They are already way too big for where they are, but I can't move them because somewhere down in the middle here, find a picture, we have Mama Perlichki. She's been sat on these eggs for about 2 weeks now, and normally I don't let them just sit anywhere, but they found a really good spot. It's quite well hidden, and we just thought we'd let it roll and see what happened. So she's in there. Those walnuts are about 2 years old. I say 2 years, I guess it's more like 18 months. And they are flying. So before I go away, I just give them an extra dose of hay. And especially with these little guys taking their first bits of food. It's super cute. What about you, Mama's favourite? You're just going to eat through the... She hasn't even stood up, she's just eating through the mesh. Come on, you can have your own pile. There you go. She says no, I want the ones from next door.
We're pretty lucky here that the local farmer cuts all of the gardens in the local area for hay, and we managed to get a couple of bales of him each year, and this is what we feed our rabbits and use for bedding throughout the year and into next summer. For my birthday this year, B took me to meet these little guys. There is a whole field full of them, and I think they're the equivalent of a gopher. What she didn't tell me was that we were going to get a puppy just afterwards.
One more down. We're going to keep Lymeria in the pheasant area with me today. She's going to help me work. I'm sure that won't happen. But what she is going to do is leave her scent everywhere. And hopefully that will help deter the fox and the pine marten and all of the other animals that have been giving us so many problems.
We also tried our first meat birds this year. This was a batch of 40 broilers. We definitely won't buy them from the same guy again. I believe they were older than they should have been and they clearly weren't as well looked after. However, we did learn a lot, especially a few things to avoid, and next year we will try again. I know that I keep coming back to this story about how much rubbish we removed from the other house, but this is just one room of possibly 20 if we include all the barns and cellars and things like that. And this one room took 2 days just to get the rubbish out of, and that was before we even started to dig up the floor and all the extra that we found down there. However, one of the cool things that we did get with the new property was this grape crusher and wine press, or grape crusher, grape press, whatever you want to call it. And both of these you will see getting used later on in the summer. I am a huge fan of remaking, rebuilding, refurbishing anything that can still be used. I hate to throw things away unnecessarily. And this fruit press and grape crusher are a great example of that. A little bit of work sanding, wire brushing, some food grades paint, and we have an awesome piece of equipment ready to use. After the arrival of the broilers, it took about a week before they started showing signs of improvement, but within 2 weeks their feathers were back, they were eating properly, running around healthy, how chickens should be. The growing chicken food project did go fairly well, but not nearly enough space was given to these plants, and so there just wasn't enough of it. On the flip side of that, I overplanted tomatoes. We ended up with about 40 plants really producing well, as well as zucchinis. I think I planted about 20 of those. They all grew well. With the tomatoes, a lot of it we jarred, and B also made this tomato ketchup, which was absolutely amazing. We still have about 10 jars left, and hopefully it'll last through to next summer. But on any given day we could go out there and probably take 10 or 15 kilos of tomatoes. We gave them away to a number of neighbours, and we stored as many as we could for ourselves as well. And this is the ketchup. We rented this mini digger and mini dumper mainly for the other property. However, we did bring it down here to sort out our driveway. It has been a muddy mess for a number of years, and while we didn't want to spend a lot of money on it, knowing that we are going to do some fairly major reconstruction on the house didn't seem sensible. we did put some fabric down and have a load of gravel dumped on top, so that we can at least park the car this winter without sinking into the mud and getting our shoes messy every time. The gravel delivery driver was a little bit grumpy, but in the end agreed to drive forwards while dumping the gravel to save us a whole bunch of work, so in the end it only took about an hour to spread it out. I would love to own a mini digger of some kind, however, it's just not in the budget for now. This one we rented wasn't too expensive, and we also rented the mini digger, which B was driving on the driveway, and you'll see her driving it around here as well. It really was such a force multiplier, the amount of work we were able to do with these two bits of kit that would have taken weeks and months without it, of course. The main reason that we got the mini digger, and that we got one as small as we did, was this barn underneath the house. The ground in here used to have cows on it, and it is so compacted that even with a pickaxe I was struggling to get through it. And finding a mini digger small enough to get into this room was pretty challenging. Thankfully we did find this one, and we did manage to get it in there, and we got all of the mud and dirt and poop and just nastiness out. The last time I drove one of these, I was actually about 13, and it was at my mum and dad's house in France. I can't remember the exact reason why we got it, however, we did have some spare time with it and I was allowed to have a go. And I seem to remember digging a pond that we never filled with water, and possibly cutting through a few roots of a tree that later fell down onto the neighbour's barn. Whoops! Of course, we didn't manage to get it completely empty of muck with this mini digger, but we got pretty close, and the last few little bits I took out with the pickaxe. Of course, if I was more experienced with the excavator, I would have got a lot more of it out. The main idea with putting this gravel into this barn is that we can move everything in there that we know that we want to keep, but that we don't want to keep moving around every 2 weeks for the next 2 years while we do the rest of the reconstruction work. Of course, it's already full, and there's plenty more stuff that needs storage, but it was a good place to start. By the middle of September, we were ready to collect the grapes and turn them into wine. This was so much fun and was part of a whole bunch of different projects coming in at the same time or coming together. So everything you're going to see here is grapes from our property. These ones are from Bear Valley Homestead, and the white ones were from the new property. But the wine press and the grape crusher was all old stuff that we found in this property when we moved in. We refurbished over the summer, knowing that we were going to get to use it towards the end of the summer. And we have ended up with about 90 litres of red wine and about 10 litres of white wine, which, while definitely not a professional vintage, is absolutely wonderful. I think it just tastes better because we made it ourselves. For us, producing our own food and drinks in this case is a little bit about being more sustainable, but it's also just about the enjoyment and the knowledge that we pick up along the way. We don't particularly believe in the end of the world or anything like that. We just enjoy this kind of lifestyle, and that's our main reason for doing this with the animals, with the grapes, with the garden, and everything that we produce. In October, we started a rabbit colony with some of our grow outs. We knew that they would eat it down to mud pretty quickly. However, we had left it for at least a month before they moved in. The grass was nearly a foot tall, and I thought we would get at least a couple of weeks of nice green rabbit colony and nice fresh grass for the rabbits. However, it took them 3 days to eat everything in this enclosure and turn it into a big muddy puddle. In October, I took a few days off from the other house. I had a go at building this barn. There's 2 reasons for this. One is that we need to move out of the barn that we currently have. As when we do the house reconstruction, it needs to be empty, so we're going to need somewhere to store all the food and that kind of stuff. And number 2, the roof on it is pretty dodgy, so I'm slightly scared that it's going to fall down. We built this barn with some old pallets and a few leftover bits and pieces, and we absolutely love it. I would be tempted to do a more permanent version of it in the future. Around this time, we also started on the retaining wall at the new property. The old wall was, well, to even call it a wall was pretty unfair to the rest of the walls. There wasn't much left of it. The vines and brambles had grown through it, bits of it had fallen down and started moving down the hill. So we went for a complete rebuild, and this was what we came up with. It's a concrete block with rebar reinforcement and then filled with concrete as well.
How are you two ladies?
Duck breeding was one of the things that I really wanted to focus on this year, and while I did focus, I had absolutely no success. From the 4 batches of eggs that I put in the electric incubator, we had 0 ducklings. And while you may say, hey, your eggs just aren't fertile, I sold eggs to a number of people and they all had a 100% hatch rate. So there's something for me to work on there. We also started to get some unwanted visitors as we moved into winter. And these couple of rats really did test my resolve to not kill anything that I wasn't going to eat. In the end, we managed to catch all of them alive and relocate them somewhere else. By the time that the retaining wall was finished in early November, it was cold enough that work outside slowly ground to a stop, and I managed to get on with some of the bigger jobs inside the new house. We've moved a couple of walls to change the floor plan, and slowly started stripping away all the years of grime and grit. We also found some time to collect all the old antique wine. This is wine that was in the property when we bought it. In the end, there was about 280 litres of it, and we took it to one of the local distilleries who have now turned it into brandy for us, otherwise known sometimes as grappa. And we've now put that into an oak barrel, and it's probably going to stay in there for at least the next 3 years while it gets turned into a nice rich brandy. In the end, from the 280 litres of wine, we ended up with 44.8 litres of brandy, which I think is probably more than we will ever drink in our lifetime, but maybe we'll start using it to preserve something.
Got my helpers. They keep coming and trying to steal my hooks. Don't you, ladies? These are beautiful chickens though. I love their colours.
And in case you're wondering, the black chicken in the background is the same one you saw in the brooder earlier in the year, and she has turned into a great and prolific egg layer for us. And these lomans you see in the foreground are some that we bought about halfway through the year, the same time as we got the broilers.
hold on. And this brown one is the baby of Diablo and... Wait a minute. Yeah, Diablo and Mr. Brown. So I suppose technically the great-granddaughter of Seeger. Anyway, she's also super beautiful. A bit scared. I do just need to check actually because... Hello. Let's just double check. Okay, definitely a lady. You can go in there with your housemate. You need a name. And this brown one needs a name. What to call you? You're like blue. You're like a blue-grey. What should we call you guys?
And finally, towards the middle of December, I finally got on to some of the plastering work in the new house, with the electrician having finished a couple of days before. For me, this is a complete experiment. It's not something I know how to do, but it is something I would like to know how to do. And I find the best way to learn anything is just to get on and do it. And of course, ask for some help from friends when you realize you're not doing it as well as you could. In the case of the plastering, this first coat's gone pretty well, and we'll have to wait and see in January how the top coat goes. We're just about to head off to England for a big family Christmas. So from all of us here at Deer Valley Homestead, thank you very much for watching, commenting, liking and subscribing. We really appreciate it. And if you want to see any more details on any of the projects you've seen in this video, feel free to look back through the channel. There are videos on pretty much everything that you have seen here. Thank you again. We wish you a happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. And we will catch you all in January.